Awesome. Thank you. So welcome all. My name is Taylor Jackson. I am the Director of Grants here at Houston Arts Alliance. I'm really excited for you all to join us today for this Cities Initiative virtual grant workshop. As you all are probably aware, we just opened our first round of the Cities Initiative, grant application for the year. Really excited about that. And today we will be providing you all with some information specific to this grant and details around the application process, the questions, eligibility that will hopefully help you all as you potentially apply for this grant opportunity either this round or in future rounds that we have coming up this year. Something that I'm really excited to share out this particular go round of our virtual workshop season is that we're launching a new initiative this year to more intentionally engage community partners. And today we have a very special co-host with us. That is ALMA, Advocates of a Latino Museum of Cultural and Visual Arts and Archive Complex in Houston, Harris County. So I would love for our co-hosts to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about your work and your organization, and then maybe a little tidbit about why this arts and cultural funding is important to our creative ecosystem. So I'll hand it over to Carlos.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carlos Duarte. I am the president of ALMA. It's really a pleasure to be co-hosting this with Houston Arts Alliance. As people may know, the Latino community is the largest community experiencing growth, not only in Houston, but in Texas and the United States. However, at this point, there is no national museum that represents all of U.S. Latinidad. So Houston has that opportunity to actually claim that space. And ALMA has been in existence now for almost 3 years. We are working hard to bring a state-of-the-art Latino museum that will allow all of the different types of art from our different communities, Latino communities, to be showcased and shared with all of the communities in Houston. I am very excited about this particular collaboration because, as we all know, all of us are contributing, through our taxes, through our creativity, through our art to the city of Houston. But sometimes some people do not realize that these resources are available. So we are really honored to be partnering this time with Houston Arts Alliance to actually promote this initiative with all of the Latino artists and makers so that they can take advantage of this. So with that, I wanted to introduce Gabriela Magaña.
Hello, everybody. I'll be here until the end of the session. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you for the work that you all are doing. It's incredibly important, and we're excited again to not only have our opportunities and the resources that we offer here at HAA marketed through your network, but also being able to uplift the incredible work that you're doing in the community. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for partnering with us. I also want to be mindful and make sure that I shout out the rest of the HAA grant staff and HAA staff that's present here today. We have Kalina, our senior grants manager, Andrea, our grants compliance specialist, Val, who is our grants coordinator, and I don't see Liana on yet, but we also have another grants assistant, Liana, who should be joining here shortly. So of course, we are all here to support you in your work and through this application process. Never hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. And with that, I will get started with our presentation for today. So I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'm a little rusty. I have not done this virtual workshop since last year. And so just give a little grace to me today. But we're gonna work it out. Thank you all for being here and for trusting us with delivering this information to you all. So a little bit about what we're going to cover today. We'll get into, about HAA, what we do, who we are, the source of our funding that of course funds our grant programs, and I'll break those down a little bit. We'll talk about what it means to get started applying for a city's initiative. We'll walk through the different funding areas, some of the application questions. We'll get into eligibility and requirements that you need when you're submitting your application. We'll talk about the grants portal, which is the online portal that you will use to submit your application. We'll cover the budget template, just because sometimes that requires a little bit extra hand-holding and walking people through what we're looking for when we ask you to fill out that budget. We'll talk about what happens after you submit your application and sort of go over the life cycle of an application. And then we'll also cover a little bit about what happens after acceptance for those who are successful and awarded by way of this process, sort of what to expect and anticipate after you receive that notification. We'll also have time at the end for Q&A, but we do have some of the team members monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions that you need to sort of like just get off your brain and you want to throw it in the chat, we have some folks monitoring that. But you can also write it down and hold your questions to the end of the session, and we'll make sure that we get those answered. Really quickly, I also was just clicking through and I saw that we also have Clara Kang from the comms department at HAA. So thank you so much, Clara, for being here today. Clara and the comms department have done an incredible job rebranding HAA's aesthetics. And so you should hopefully notice a little bit of a change in terms of our style, our colors, our branding throughout this PowerPoint presentation today. So yeah, I want to shout out Clara and Cotton from comms for making that redesign come to fruition. Thank you all. All right, so who is Houston Arts Alliance? What do we do? So Houston Arts Alliance, or HAA, is a local arts and cultural organization whose principal work is to implement the City of Houston's vision, values, and goals for its arts grant-making and civic arts investment. HAA's work, specifically the work of the grants department, is conducted through a contract that we have with the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, whom we refer to as MOCA. HAA also executes privately funded special projects to meet the needs of the arts community, such as disaster preparation, research on the state of the arts in Houston, and temporary public art projects that vitalize neighborhoods. Our funding source, where does our money come from? So the City of Houston actually provides all of the funds for HAA's competitive grant program. The funds are sourced from the hotel occupancy tax. We refer to this tax as HOT, which supports arts and cultural programming that is accessible to the Houston community and its visitors, created by individual artists and creatives, 501c3 nonprofits, and fiscally sponsored programs. So that HOT revenue is actually, there's a portion of that revenue that is dedicated to arts, culture, and tourism. We at HAA receive a portion of that cut from the City of Houston by way of Houston First, and that's the money that we use to disperse by way of these competitive grant programs to the arts and cultural community. All of this is governed under a contract that we have with the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. And on this slide, you'll be able to see the breakdown of the revenue that we receive. So 74.5% of the money we receive goes directly to the community by way of our grant programs. 9% we collect as an administration fee, and then 16.5% goes directly to Miller Outdoor Theater, who also uses HOT tax to run their version of a grant program supporting arts and cultural organizations looking to do program at Miller in the city. To further break down that 74.5%, So 36% of that money goes to organizations with budgets over $10 million by way of our Support for Organizations grant program. Another 36% goes directly to organizations with budgets under $10 million, also related to our Support for Organizations grant program. It also includes monies going to our Support for Artists and Creative Individuals program, our Let Creativity Happen grant program, and our Festival grant program. So all of those programs receive the other cut of the 36%. And then we have a special allocation of 2.5% dedicated to the city's initiative grant program, which you all are here to learn about today. So here's just really quickly a breakdown of all of the grant programs that we offer. I won't go into too much detail because, again, you all are here to learn about Cities Initiative. But this is just an overview of the different programs that we offer, how much applicants can request by way of those programs, and how those programs are funded. It's important to note that Cities Initiative is funded by way of cash in hand, meaning that that is money that has already been collected and in our account that we are sending out, as a part of this program. All right, so let's talk about CI overall. What is this grant program about? So the Cities Initiative grant program provides funding to individual artists, creatives, and nonprofits for strategic and creative opportunities to engage visitors and residents while building upon Houston's cultural identity and tourism. Proposed activities should not be a part of the applicant's regular programming or annual schedule of activities or events. That's a really big point that I want to highlight. If you are applying for Cities Initiative, and let's say your organization has, a year's worth of programming, annual programming that is a part of their slate that they deliver to the community, those programs could not be funded by Cities Initiative. Think of Cities Initiative as funding specialized projects. Maybe you're wanting to pilot a new program, or maybe you're doing a once in a lifetime, if you will, partnership with a organization or an artist collective that's coming into town. These are really for those sort of like specialized one-off programs that you're looking to do in the community. That is what Cities Initiative is here to support. Of course, Houston is an international city linked by commerce and culture to countless places across the world. Its growing population show that Houston is now single-handedly the most ethnically diverse major metropolitan area in the country. 1 in 4 residents here are foreign-born, contributing to an ever-changing cultural landscape that spurs creative innovation. It's one of the best places in the world for arts, if we're being honest with ourselves, and its creative community represents a strategic opportunity for Houston's civic identity and tourism. The Cities Initiative grants, so typical awards are between $5,000 and $10,000. There is an opportunity to apply for more funding if you have a preliminary meeting with the grant staff first. For this first round of Cities Initiative, we are only accepting requests for over $10K for folks applying to the disaster resilience category. Each round, we will highlight a different funding area, a different funding category where applicants are eligible to apply for more than $10K. For those who are also interested in applying for more than $10K, I would be mindful of the guidelines. We have specific dates that we communicate out. You have to schedule the meeting by that date in order to have your request for $10K approved. Unfortunately, at this time, the request ends today if you would like to request more than $10K to have that meeting. So after today, we will no longer be accepting meetings to hear those requests until the next round. Speaking of our different funding areas, there are three funding areas that make the CI grant program pretty unique in comparison to our other grant programs. Successful projects will align with one of these three areas. The first is art disaster resilience awareness. We also have art neighborhood cultural destinations and art and conference tourism. So let's break down each of these three funding areas. So if you're applying to art and disaster resilience awareness, your proposed projects should center on heightening awareness and preparedness concerning environmental risks, such as climate crisis, flooding, food deserts, hurricanes, tropical storms, environmental justice, electricity disruption, and related subjects using your chosen artistic medium. We highly encourage you all to consult the Resilient Houston and Climate Action Plan, specifically Chapter 2, to better understand and align the proposed project with the city's goals in utilizing arts and culture to increase risk awareness and readiness. And all of this information you can find in our grant guidelines by way of this website that I have highlighted down here at the bottom. We'll also make sure to drop a link in the chat so you can have a direct link to access the grant opportunity page and the grant guidelines and application for cities initiative. All right, art and neighborhood cultural destinations. So if you are applying under this funding area, your project must have a primary goal of engaging residents from a specific neighborhood or community. Proposed projects should incorporate at least one arts and cultural event taking place in the selected neighborhood. This event should actively involve and celebrate the community and residents of that area, highlighting their distinctiveness, their history, or their contributions to the greater Houston landscape. And our last funding area is the art and conference tourism funding area. If you're applying under this focus area, your proposal should entail incorporating or collaborating with a planned conference or hosting a conference to offer conference attendees, locals, and visitors an activity showcasing Houston artists or cultural attractions. The objective is to broaden the artistic dimensions of the conference's programming. Successful projects applying to any of these funding areas for cities initiative will include the following elements. You should be able to speak to community engagement, measurable impact, documented support of local artists and creatives, and a clear alignment with one of the three funding areas. Now I want to quickly just review some of the application questions for the Cities Initiative grant. You can find this in our guidelines. So there are three different sections that you will sort of be speaking to as you move throughout the application. The first is the artistic programming section. Here you should make sure that your artistic goals, vision, and process are clearly outlined. You should demonstrate artistic and cultural vibrancy by way of your project. You should also communicate well-defined public programming that is imaginative and innovative for Houstonians and visitors. There are two subsections as a part of the artistic programming section. The first is the funding area description, which is worth 10 points. This is where you're going to explain your funding area, why you chose it, and how it connects to the project that you're delivering. And then we have the detailed project proposal, where you're going to describe your project in detail, describe what the project is, when and where it's happening, and who is involved in that project. And that section is worth 30 points. The second section is the public benefit section. And this section is really important because it asks you to connect your project to a defined community, demonstrate effective strategies in marketing and audience engagement that are inclusive and publicly accessible, and how the project is inviting to its community and the broader public. There are two subsections, a part of the public benefit section. The first is the community engagement section, where you're going to describe your community, how your project is meaningful, meaningfully connected with your defined community. And we have some other like questions that kind of help guide and shape your response to that. So the community engagement section is worth 25 points. And then we have the promotion and access subsection, which is worth 15 points. Here you're going to explain how you will promote and expand access to your work. And again, we also have some guiding questions that can help shape that part of the narrative for you. The last section is the stewardship of public resources section. Here it's important that you demonstrate the ability to steward public resources. You'll show appropriate preparation to complete proposed activities and show that the budget is feasible and demonstrates investment in arts, creatives, and local talent. I won't break down the budget table quite yet because that's coming up later on in the PowerPoint. But we will sort of go over what that budget template looks like, as I mentioned earlier. All right, I'm going to represent. Here are the upcoming deadlines that we have for the Cities Initiative program for this year. The first deadline is coming up April 23rd at 11:59 p.m. The second round opens May 27th and closes June 25th at 11:59 p.m. And the third round opens August 30th and closes September 29th at 11:59 p.m. All right, so that section was really meant to sort of, again, give you a general idea of what the Cities Initiative program is about, the different funding areas that make up this program, and sort of what to anticipate when you're answering and responding to the narrative questions for this program. Now let's talk about some general eligibility requirements. Let's talk about what HAA grants cannot support. We're also going to cover work samples and other requirements that are specific to the Cities Initiative program. And we'll also do a brief overview of fiscal sponsorships for folks who might be interested in pursuing that. All right, so first starting off with some general eligibility requirements. So we'll start with proof of residence in headquarters. So all applicants must demonstrate a physical address in the city of Houston limits. We do verify this through an online council member mapping tool. You can find a link to that tool in the guidelines and on our website. Important to note, PO boxes are not accepted as they do not establish residency or headquarters within the city of Houston limits, and you will be asked to provide proof documenting the physical address of your residence or headquarters here in the city of Houston. Acceptable documents include a state-issued ID or driver's license, a lease agreement, or a phone utility bill from the calendar year 2024. That is really important to note, and a change from previous years. Documents that you are submitting to verify your residence or headquarters, unless it is a current driver's license, it needs to be stated on the document. There needs to be a date that verifies this document is from the calendar year 2024. If you're submitting a lease agreement, so long as the lease agreement is current and we can see that reflected in the term of the lease agreement, that is fine. But if you're submitting a bill or a bank statement or anything from like a government entity, from a third party in general, it needs to have a date that shows that this is proof of your headquarters from this year, 2024. And that goes for individuals, organizations, and fiscal sponsors. For individual applicants, you also must provide proof of age, as individual applicants must be at least 18 years old to apply for our grants. Acceptable documents for that could include, again, a driver's license, a Texas identification card, a valid unexpired passport, a U.S. certificate of citizenship, or an unexpired U.S. military identification card. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. And if you have questions about whether or not the proof that you are providing in your application is acceptable, don't hesitate to reach out to the grant staff and we can, help you work through that. For organizations applying, it's important that you know that you must have tax exempt status under Internal Revenue Code section 501c3, which we will verify through the IRS tax exemption organization search. If you are not an organization with 501c3 status, you can apply through a fiscal sponsor who has 501c3 status. But either the organization or the fiscal sponsor has to have that 501c3 status if you are applying as an organization or even as like a collective, right? If you're applying as a collective that doesn't have, that 501c3 status, you will definitely need a fiscal sponsor. Okay, another really big important eligibility point. There needs to be a clear public presentation reflected in your application. So during the grant term, you're required to have at least one in-person event or one live virtual presentation. You must identify the publicly accessible in-person or live virtual event in your application. The event must be open to the general public. It can be ticketed. Events can be ticketed, but they cannot exclude the public or limit who may be a member of the audience. If the event has limited capacity due to seating restrictions, everyone must have equal access or opportunity to attend the event on a first come, first served basis. A few examples of events that grants have supported in the past include art exhibitions, film screenings, music, dance, and theater performances, online arts programming, which I'll give a few examples of that here shortly, literary readings and publications, local arts festivals, and of course, other activities, as this is not an exhaustive list. Examples of live virtual events include live streamed concerts or performances, virtual artist talks, virtual Q&As, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, so other activities could also be included. If you have questions around whether or not you have a public presentation component in your application, again, don't hesitate to reach out to the team so that we can sort of help clarify what we mean by that. And so you have that clarity going into writing your application, because unfortunately, if your public presentation is not made clear, your application could be deemed ineligible. Couple other things to note as it relates to public presentations. So nonprofit organizations or applicants whose primary programming takes place in maybe a K-12 school or is arts education focused, you must have a public-facing program that is open to the general public. Public programming can be geared toward youth audiences, but it must be accessible to everyone. Applicants are also solely responsible for securing the necessary permits, permissions, insurance, and approvals for any proposal that requires city permits or clearances, including but not limited to publicly installed art, street closures, sound amplification in space, or murals. And a nonprofit whose mission is not the public presentation or exhibition of art and culture should focus their grant application on the public-facing arts and arts program that they are proposing. Another really important eligibility point. So applicants may only submit one application for each individual grant program. In other words, applicants cannot send multiple applications to the same grant program. So if you have like 3 projects that you have in mind, you cannot submit a city's initiative application for all 3 of those projects. You have to pick one. Applicants cannot use the same project proposal to apply to more than one grant program. So in other words, applicants need to decide which grant program best aligns with their project goals and apply to that specific program. A few other specific eligibility requirements. Artists who work in an artistic capacity with a nonprofit organization, maybe as an artistic director or an ED, maybe a resident artist. If you're applying as an individual, you must apply with a program that is independent of the organization that you work for. And for collaborative art projects, one artist must serve as the lead applicant for the project, and all members need to meet eligibility requirements. And just so you know, a collaborator is defined as someone who is a co-owner of the program and a generative part of the team. Subcontractors are not necessarily considered collaborators. And again, if you need any clarity around this, don't hesitate to reach out to the team directly and we can offer that to you. All right, for fiscal sponsorships. So a fiscal sponsorship is defined as a project of an organization or collective that does not have the federal IRS tax exempt status, so doesn't have that 501c3 status required to apply for organizational grants. And so you've entered into a fiscal sponsorship agreement with an organization that has that 501c3 status to be eligible. All fiscal sponsors and their projects, right? So the organization or the collective that is seeking the fiscal sponsorship must adhere to the previous requirements laid out, in addition to meeting the eligibility requirements that are laid out in the grant guidelines. We have a whole section where we sort of talk about what we require as it relates to, you know, a fiscal sponsorship agreement. And so you want to make sure that you and your fiscal sponsor have an understanding of what those requirements are, as you will be asked to upload a copy of the fiscal sponsorship agreement to the application. So make sure, again, that if you are using a fiscal sponsor, that you look at the guidelines and have a clear understanding of the requirements for fiscal sponsorships before you and your fiscal sponsorship sort of sign on to apply for any grant. Okay, let's shift a little bit and talk about what HAA grants cannot support. So we cannot support any activities taking place outside of the City of Houston limits. This includes outlying suburbs. Your program location must be represented by a Houston City Council member verified through the online council member mapping tool. So not only do you have to prove headquarters or residency in the City of Houston limits, but your venue or wherever your project, your program is taking place, it also needs to be within the City of Houston limits. And we will check that location with the same tool that we use to check your address, that online council member mapping tool. I encourage everybody to please make sure that you check your address and make sure that it is verified through that mapping tool before applying to a grant. I can't tell you how many folks that we've had go through the entire application process just to be deemed ineligible because they didn't use that tool to make sure that their address was actually inside the City of Houston limits. I would say that just because your address has Houston included, it does not necessarily make it within the City of Houston limits. And just because your address might have Katy It doesn't mean that your address is outside the city of Houston limits. So just please do your due diligence and check before you do the hard work and lifting of putting together and submitting an application. All right, grants cannot be applied to programs outside of the grant term. Activities must take place within the respective grant term. And if you are awarded, you will know exactly what your grant term is by way of the contract. It's also included in the guidelines. I think for this first round, the grant term is from August 2024 to August 2025. So you will need to complete your project within that time span. Events with exclusive audiences that do not allow participation of the general public, such as a 21 and up event or programming, youth-specific programming, or gender-specific programming is not permitted. Again, all of the events have to be open to the general public and visitors coming into the city of Houston. So it cannot have an exclusive audience. Competitions, award ceremonies, scholarships, cash prizes, fundraising activities and events, sports and recreational activities, or parties and private celebrations are not eligible for grant funds. Any activities being funded by Miller Outdoor Theater, since it's also supported by the HOT Fund, as we sort of spoke to earlier, are not eligible for funding. So you cannot sort of duplicate funding support from HAA and Miller for the same project. City of Houston employees, elected officials, mayor's office staff, and their immediate family are not eligible for applying for grants. Neither are Houston Arts Alliance employees, board members, and their immediate family. Grants to K through 12 public, private, or charter schools are not eligible for funding. Educational programs such as workshops or youth education programs are not eligible for funding. And this is sort of a big update to our guidelines this year. So I want to make sure that I call this out. If you are applying as an arts educational program, your application should center around the public presentation of your programming that is open to the general public. So let's say that you are an arts educational organization that works specifically with youth and you do an after-school program. We cannot fund the after-school program. However, if the after-school program culminates with some sort of public presentation of the students' work to the community and families, that is what we can cover because it's a public presentation that is open to the general public. So your application should really center on it, using that as an example, the showcasing and the display of the students' work to the community and their families, more so than it does the after-school program activities, because again, the after-school activities in itself, because it's for an exclusive audience, is not eligible to be covered by way of our funds. And if you have any questions or again, need more clarity around that, don't hesitate to reach out to the team. Trade fairs, events of primarily commercial nature or consumer shows are not eligible for funding. And faith-based organizations using funds for any activities which have a primarily religious purpose or any activities that exist as a part of a religious sermon or service is not allowed for funding. Lastly, any activities receiving funding from other HAA grant programs are not eligible. Organizations and/or individual applicants collaborating on the same project or program cannot separately apply for support to fund this collaborative program. So in other words, you cannot have multiple submissions from different applicants for the same program or multiple submissions to the same grant program from the same organization or individual applicant. All right, work samples, another big part of the application. Applicants must upload documentation of their work meant to demonstrate the vibrancy in the proposed project or the applicant's body of work. You can include up to 5 individual image or audio files and 5 PDFs that don't exceed 100 megabytes each. And applicants are encouraged to include text descriptions to help panelists understand work samples. Work samples are really important because you will not have an opportunity to really sit face to face with the panelist and be able to show either the work that you have in mind for the current project that you're applying or a history of your work in the past. So this is really a way for you to like get your work in the face of the panelists and show them what it is that you do. I would encourage you all to make the most out of the work samples as possible. That's why we give you so many options for uploading and submitting your work samples, and making sure that you have a range of work samples that can, again, really speak to your creative work history. And also, if you have it, you know, any images or ongoing sort of audio or video or PDF files that you can use to display the work that you are applying for. Okay, now we're going to shift gears again. After talking about sort of eligibility and application requirements, let's talk about where you're going to submit all of this information, and that is our HAA Grants Portal. So the Grants Portal is located at haa.smartsimple.com. You will need to log in or register if you are new to the system. Once you're logged in and registered, you will see two different places that you can click on to see opportunities. If you're applying as an individual, you're going to click My Profile. And if you're applying as an organization, you're going to click your organization's profile. Once you click either individual or organizations, you'll be able to see the different funding opportunities that are available for you to apply to. You'll also be able to see, if this is not your first time in the portal, sort of a history of other applications that you've submitted in the past, payment history, final report history. All of that is located under your profile. Something that I want to point out to make sure that you all know, when you are applying for, let's say this first round of Cities Initiative, make sure that you are applying under the correct grant cycle. If you started an application last year, let's say you started an application for the third round of CI in 2023, and you click that application and start just, you know, working from that 2023 application, you're going to get to the end and it's going to tell you that the deadline for that particular grant cycle has passed. So I would triple check to make sure that you are submitting your application under the right grant cycle. It will say, you know, CI 2024 round 1. It'll tell you exactly what's open, and you should use that particular link to apply for your grant. You can always, I think, go in and maybe copy or transfer over from a draft application what you need. But again, make sure that you're submitting to the right grant cycle, because if you get to the end of the, you know, application window and it's 11:58 and you're trying to submit from last year's application and it's not letting you do that, you could completely miss the deadline altogether. So triple check. The staff does try to look and see if there's anybody, you know, working from an old application and let them know, but there is no guarantee that we will catch it, nor no guarantee that we will catch it in time before the deadline. So please, 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 I'm harping on this because it's happened so many times and we've had to tell people, I'm sorry, you're ineligible because you missed the deadline. So please check to make sure you're applying under the right grant cycle. All right, the budget. This is a part of the stewardship of public funds section that I mentioned earlier when I was reviewing the other application sections, and I want to make sure that I go over this in detail so folks have an understanding of the purpose of this template and how to fill it out. So for the budget template, you are going to use the income and expenses table to report the full cost of your proposed arts and cultural funding. So not just what you're requesting from HAA, but also if you've received or anticipate any other funding, you will need to make sure that that is reflected in this budget as well. If recommended for funding, the award amounts will follow the guidelines for the specific grant program to which the applicant applies. So let's talk about the income section. So when you are filling out the income section, which is the first section that you see when you're sort of filling out the table, in row 1, you will see contributed City of Houston. This section is basically describing what you are requesting from HAA, right? So you will list the amount of your grant request under the amount of request column. So for this first line that says City of Houston, just think City of Houston / HAA. The amount of the request should match the amount of the request that you put earlier on in the application. It should be the same number. So if you're requesting $10,000 for Cities Initiative, you're going to put that in this section here. In rows 2 through 9, you will list other funding sources under the other funds column. So you'll give a description of the name. Maybe you received a grant from Houston Endowment. You'll write their name, and then you'll specify how much funding you received or anticipate from this potential funder. All of the columns will automatically calculate the sum, which will appear in the row labeled total down here at the bottom. The expense section works very similarly. So in the amount of requests, so contributed City of Houston, amount of request, again, when you see that contributed City of Houston, think of that as meaning what you were requesting from HAA, you're going to put the amount of that request there. In the other funds column, you're going to put all expenses that will be covered by other funding sources. So again, if you're receiving money from Houston Endowment, you'll put how much of the funds you are going to be spending from the money that you received from them and what it's for. Be sure to review the what may not be funded section of the grant guidelines to ensure that you are only including eligible expenses under the amount that you are requesting from HAA. You'll also be able to include a description box. A description for all of the items that you are listing out in your expenses. So for instance, in the expense section, for marketing expenses, you can specify, exactly what marketing expenses entail. So maybe that's your, 50,000 flyers or however much for, paid promotion through social media. You'll want to make sure that you describe as much of the expense as possible so that the panel has a clear understanding of exactly how you're going to be spending this money. I will also note if you do have catering expenses or expenses that are not eligible for funding by HAA, but it's being covered by another funder, you can also list that in the budget. But again, just make it very clear that those expenses are not being used as a part of what you're requesting from HAA, and that it is, money that you have from another funder, another sponsor, or another source of income. Speaking of expenses that are not permitted, let's go over those. Again, make sure that you review this before you start putting together the budget so that you're only listing eligible expenses as it relates to what you're asking HAA / the City of Houston for. If you have too many expenses that are ineligible, it could lead to your application being deemed ineligible. So please, please, please make sure that you are verifying that before you submit your application. Expenses that are not permitted, travel outside of the City of Houston. deficits, loans, interest on loans, fines, penalties, or cost of litigation, professional development training for the applicant, such as classes, coaching, conferences, or workshops, the purchase of a single material or equipment item that exceeds $250, except for rental costs directly affiliated with the funded project. So to explain this a little bit, if you are renting a venue for your space and it costs $4,000 to rent the venue, that is totally okay to include in your budget for HAA to cover. If you need a camera for your project and that camera costs over $250, we would not be able to cover the expense of that camera. If you are renting a camera and it costs over $250, that is permitted. So, you know, the distinction is between what is being purchased and what is being rented. You cannot purchase any single material item or equipment item that is over $250. You can rent though. So again, if you have questions about that as you're filling out the budget, check in with the team. Capital expenses such as the purchase of property or land, building construction or renovation, or landscape adaptations are not permissible. And we do not cover food. No meals, refreshments, or catering expenses are permitted to be covered by way of our grants. Okay, so let's we're almost to the end, but again, I want to talk about the life cycle of an application, sort of what happens after you submit, and then what happens if you are accepted. So the life cycle of an application, after you hit submit, first HAA staff is going to verify eligibility. We're going to verify application completeness, make sure that there's that public presentation requirement, and score any objective criteria that's laid out in the application. From there, it goes to peer panels, and the peer panels are going to score and comment and discuss all eligible applications. After the peer panel sees it, it makes its way to the grants committee, who verifies that our process was followed with integrity, and as we have publicly communicated by way of our guidelines, application, and through, you know, programs such as our workshops. And then after we receive the HAA grants committee approval, it's sent to the city of Houston for the mayor's final sign off. So to break down each one of these, so after you submit and the staff goes through and do eligibility verification, there is an opportunity to cure specific parts of the application if necessary. So any application with missing or incorrect documentation will be notified by the grant staff or from the grant staff for rectification. Staff will notify those applicants what is missing or incorrect via email, and the email notification will provide applicants the opportunity to cure the missing or incorrect documentation within 4 business days from the date of the notification. A really important note, all grant notifications are sent solely via email. We are not going to call each and every applicant and let them know that you know, their application needs to be cured. We have done that in the past, and it is a little daunting now that we are getting more and more and more applications, and it's not particularly fair if we're not able to reach out to everybody. But we will continue to send email notifications regarding the curing documents that we need up until the deadline. So make sure to check your email after you hit submit, just in case you get an email notifying you to cure. So they're only going to be sent via an email, and it's only going to go to the applicant and or the applicant's primary grant contact designated in the HAA online grants portal. So whoever is designated as the applicant or the primary grant contact, that is the only person that we will send the notification to cure, you know, the necessary documentation. If, you know, that person is maybe out of the office or no longer works there, it is the responsibility of the organization to monitor that person's email to make sure that you are not missing out on any notification from us. Applicants may be prompted to cure the following. Maybe it's illegible. I can't say that word right now. Illegible. There we go. Or unacceptable
Eligible,
proof.
not illegible, eligible.
Yes, there you go. See, I tried to do it again.
Eligible.
There, but y'all see it. Or unacceptable proof of age documentation, unacceptable proof of residency documentation, or submission to multiple grant programs for the same project, or submission of multiple applications to the same grant program. So if you submit, you know, maybe the same project to Cities Initiative and Let Creativity Happen, somebody from the staff will reach out to you and say, hey, you need to pick between either your CI or your LCH application because it's for the same project. If you submit, let's say, 2 applications to the first round of Cities Initiative, the staff will reach out and say, hey, for this first round, you need to pick between one of these applications. Applications will not be reopened to correct narratives, work samples, responses to questions, or budget tables after you submit. That is not eligible for curing. And no information will be accepted after the curing deadline, which will be indicated in the notification email that you receive. So if you fail to submit the correct documentation within the allotted time frame, your application will be deemed ineligible and will not be considered for funding. If you have any concerns regarding eligibility determination at the end of the process, maybe after you receive an ineligible determination, it could be eligible for a grant appeal. That information you can find on our website. I would just make sure to read through it and make sure again that your application is eligible for an appeal before you submit. All right, so let's say you've submitted, your application was determined eligible. What happens next? So then you're going to move to peer panels. HAA uses the competitive peer review process to score and rank eligible grant applications. This is a long-time national practice of engaging community representatives with art expertise to make critical decisions about public funding competitions. Something really important to note, this process removes HAA staff, board, and their immediate family from the evaluation of grant applications, except for objective scoring sections outlined in the guidelines. So the staff, the board has no hands at all in the evaluation or the assessment of the scores for your application. That strictly comes from the panel. We design the process. The panel is tasked with scoring and again, commenting on your application, which ultimately determines who gets funded. If you yourself are interested in being a panelist, please, please, please scan this QR code on the screen and submit your information to our form. It's important that our panels include a diversity of skills, self-identity, art forms, expertise, and experience to ensure that our panels are able to properly assess the merit in each of the applications requesting city funding. You can be an applicant and a panelist. We will just make sure that we do not put you on a panel where your application is being scored. So, you know, don't hesitate to submit your information, even if you're applying or plan on applying for an HAA grant this year. We're mindful of who's applying and who we're asking to be a panelist. So there will be no conflict in that regard. I also think, you know, serving as a panelist is a really good way to understand this process from the other side of the table. I've had so many people who have, you know, participated as panelists and said that that experience really helped inform the way that they write their HAA grant applications, because being a part of the discussion and sort of understanding what the panel is looking for was insightful and could kind of help them rethink or reframe, you know, how they put together their request. So it's also a great learning experience. And, not for nothing, there's also a $300 stipend that comes along with it. If you have any questions about being a panelist, Val, who is our grants coordinator online, is actually our panel coordinator. And so you can reach out to him directly and he can answer any questions that you might have. All right, so after the panel finishes scores, we take those scores, we rank all of the applications based on the panelist scores, and dependent on the amount of funding that we have available, that is what determines who actually gets awarded. And so we put together the recommendations and forward them to the Houston Arts Alliance Grants Committee, which again reviews and votes to ensure that the panel process, the adjudication process, the application process was followed with integrity. The committee does not alter the recommendation from any of the panel's scores or adjudication. After we have approval from the grants committee, the recommendations are then forwarded to the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs for final approval by the mayor. Recommendations are not final until the City of Houston approval process is complete. So they are our last step. Now, let's dream for a second. Let's say you put together your city's initiative application, you submit, it goes through panels, the process is approved by the committee and the mayor, and he sends over the letter approving all of the recommendations that we put forward, and you are included, right? You are going to be getting a HAA grant for the city's initiative grant program. What can you expect after acceptance? So first you will be notified via email that you have been awarded and that you can anticipate the grant contract to be sent to you within the upcoming weeks. Once you sign your contract, the grants division puts together all of the information needed to get your first payment ready to be processed by the finance department. Processing for that first payment takes about 2, I would say, maybe sometimes even 3 weeks for disbursement into your account on file that you submit to us. You will receive 80% of the funding that you requested at the time of contract signing. After you receive that 80%, you are well on your way to get started with your project. You can submit your final report. So let's say you start your project in August and it's completed by December. You can submit your final report at any time, so long as your public presentation has occurred. And then once you submit your final report, once it's reviewed and approved by the grant staff, that is when we will then send the information over to finance to start processing your second and final payment, which will be 20% of your award. But again, for all of our grant programs, Cities Initiative included, the grant term is a year long. It's 12 months. So you have 12 months to complete your project. And your final report is due 30 days after the end of your grant term. And so for your final report, just a few things that you'll need to keep in mind if you end up needing to submit that. There are 4 requirements. 1, you will need to post your event to the cultural events calendar. All grantees must present their work via the posting to this event's calendar, and you will need to include a link of that post in your final report. Marketing materials, you'll need to upload an example of marketing materials showcasing that you credited support from the City of Houston and Houston Arts Alliance. You'll also submit a final report listing out the grant expenditures. And work samples. You'll need to make sure that you submit images, links, and/or videos documenting that the public presentation, the event, took place. All right, that is all of the information that I have for you all today for Cities Initiative. Thank you so much for being here and listening to all this information. I know it's maybe a lot to digest and process. But now we can take any questions that you all might have.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes. I'm gonna stop
Okay.
sharing so I can see.
In the grant, I cannot write this amount in the budget. Somehow it keeps bringing a box that says contributed dash City of Houston amount must be equal to grant amount requested.
Okay.
And I keep writing both. So I don't know whether I should write the 10,000 in the description part, or I just write HAA grant and then put 10,000 in the request part for
Yeah.
HAA.
So how about we do this? If you could drop your email or contact information in the chat,
Yeah.
we'll get one of the grants team members to reach out to you directly, and maybe we can even do like screen share to help you fill out that portion of the budget.
Okay, I
Does that
have to
work?
do at 81, I don't know how to do all those things. But
That's
I
okay.
did send a scanned page to yesterday. I think it went to Val.
Okay.
And if you could, he said that they would fill it up for me. So I'm just trying to find out whether that's okay or not.
Yeah, so
Because
I'll have Val follow up with you directly.
Okay, dear.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get you situated.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Because I do want to finish the grant, and it's not coming on page 1 either, where they put amount requested. I cannot put my $10,000 there too. It just vanishes when I put save.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have someone from the team reach out and sort of troubleshoot that with you, and
Okay, dear.
we'll get it done before the deadline, I promise.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Jeanette, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, good afternoon, I imagine. I want to just say that your presentation was on point, and thank you. Very well spoken and said and thorough, and I highly appreciate that. And I actually, yeah, and I actually, yeah, you're welcome. I sent you a text or through the chat or whatever for my question, but I'm just wanting to know. So I'm interested in doing the art and conference, but part of your expenses that are not eligible are conference fees. So can you just
So that is professional development fees for a particular individual. So if you are, of course, applying to put on a conference or provide arts and cultural programming for a conference, that's fine. If you are an individual looking to again, develop yourself professionally and you wanted to go to a conference to do that, our funds would not be able to cover you actually going to a conference.
Wonderful. So if there was a fee to participate in a conference, then that's okay.
So if there's a fee to participate in a conference that is for your professional development, that is not eligible. If you are putting on the conference and there are fees associated with you putting on the conference, that is acceptable.
Okay, so to be more specific, if there's a conference and I'm providing, the project is an extension of what the conference is in the form of an art project, and they're requiring me, okay, well, you need to have a ticket to participate.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So they're asking you to purchase a ticket even though you're delivering programming for them?
Sometimes that happens. It just kind of depends on the conference.
Okay, so I think that would be eligible because again, it's not for your professional development, it's to give you access to putting on the cultural programming at the conference.
Yeah, it's super counterintuitive, but I've had to deal with that before in the past. So
yeah. So long as it's not just like a like a professional development opportunity, like you're going to the Grant Makers in the Arts conference in Puerto Rico next year, like that would not go. But if it's Yeah, I know, sorry. But again, if it's for you to be able to do your work, for you to be able to, you know, present your arts and cultural programming at this conference, then that would be acceptable.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'll reach out if
course.
there are any other questions. Thank you
Yeah,
again.
absolutely. Thank you, Jeanette. Thanks for being here.
I have a question, please.
Yes.
Um, I would like to do a film, and I can identify the production staff, but until I'm funded, I won't be able to cast. Is that acceptable?
Yes, you can talk about how you anticipate casting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, of course, absolutely. Yeah, we understand that, you know, some of this work is probably in the early stages of development. So as much detail as you can provide to the panelists about what you plan to do, I think, and the more helpful it is for them to sort of understand your vision and be able to score and comment on your application based on that.
And what materials can you deliver to the board in addition to your grant proposal?
So the work samples. So I would pay special attention to the work sample section of the guidelines because it'll break down to you sort of, you know, images, videos, audio clips, even links that you have to your work that you can submit to the panel for them to be able to sort of see the history of your work or anything that you have, you know, incubating in the works as it relates to the project that you're applying for.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mark. Thank you. Dee, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. How you doing this afternoon?
Doing well. Thank you. How are you?
So I'm good. Thanks for asking. So my question is, I heard you said something about fundraising that is not allowed. Okay,
That
well,
is-
with this event, will I be able to sell tickets?
Yes, you can
Okay,
sell
so
tickets.
okay,
Mhm.
so that wouldn't be counted as funds raised.
That is not considered
Okay.
fundraising. No,
Okay, okay, all right, perfect. Thank you so much.
of course. Any other questions? And again, even if you don't have any at this time, I'm going to reshare my screen so that you all know, have the important links, how to reach out to us. If we could drop in the chat, Val, if we have not already, our link tree. That way you'll be able to, oh, I see it, yes. Val earlier dropped the link tree. That is such an awesome tool. It has all the important links that you might need to either access the grant staff, the application, the guidelines, the portal as you're working on your application. I will drop it again here at the bottom. Just so you all don't have to like scroll all the way back up to the top of the chat. And Sylvia, I see that your hand just popped up.
Yes, hi. Piggybacking to Dee's question, this project doesn't have to be non-profitable. It could be profitable, for profit.
So if it is primarily for profit, it is not eligible for funding. Tickets are okay, but the program and project itself should not be for
Major
for-profit sorry, my mind is blanking right now, for-profit like reason. It should be, you know, as accessible to the general public as possible, and it should be really supporting the arts and cultural ecosystem. There are some times that, again, maybe based on ticket sales, folks plan on generating some sort of revenue, but so long as the project itself is not meant to be for a for-profit like benefit, you're okay to apply. And if you have questions around that, because I understand it can be like some fine lines around that, you can reach out to the team and tell us specifically what you're thinking about, and we can kind of, help you understand what's eligible and what's not.
Okay, but maybe it can cover some of the cost that wasn't covered by the grant.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would encourage folks, because we hear this a lot from panelists, people put like ticket sales in the income portion of the budget, but they don't put how much they anticipate in making from ticket sales. So if you are going to include tickets in your budget income, please make sure to also include how much you anticipate to make from those ticket sales.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course. All righty, you all. Well, I have kept y'all long enough. I hope this workshop was
I have one more
informative.
question.
Oh, one more question. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Sponsors and donors, are we allowed to have those?
Yes.
Okay.
You would just
Okay.
include that in the other funds section of the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking out the time to get this information. I hope it was helpful. If you have any further questions, we're here. The support does not stop at the end of this workshop. Reach out to us, schedule a meeting with us, send us a question via Zendesk, and we will be back in touch with you as soon as possible. Thank you all so much. Have a
And
great
thank-
afternoon. Happy Friday.
And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
At last I swear, now I got you. Oh God. Can you see me or no?
I
I don't
cannot
know.
see you.
Oh,
don't think your
so I'm
camera's
still
on.
backward. Yeah. Uh-oh. What did I do? Okay, start video. Okay, that must be the, no. Is that the way you get my face? No, you don't get my face.
No, I didn't see your face.
What do? I do start video, don't I do?
Yes, you could do start video.
And then there's a red line. Okay, now.
Oh, and
Now
then
what
I see it looks like a globe.
Yeah, my face doesn't come. My face is not the globe.
Aw. Well, maybe when we have the staff reach out to you to help with your budget, we'll also have them help you get your camera.
Teach me a few things,
There you go.
I'm still
Yes.
a paper person, I'm still a paper person. So I'm trying. And at 81, I became the president of India Culture Center. So I'm struggling.
That's
So
okay.
yeah,
That's okay.
I'm just trying my best,
You're doing a great job. You're doing
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. I had written with HAA the grant which we did get 2-3 years ago. It was called Building Bridges.
Okay. That's
Yeah, when we
awesome.
got it, and we had the Vietnamese, the Chinese, the Thai people, and the Indian people on one stage. And
Oh,
I mean, we
wow.
had the dancers because we wanted to understand other cultures and then things like that. So at this time, what I'm doing is, as you said, your focus is on the community. So I'm pulling the Gujarati community, which comes to the Gujarati community center, the GSH event hall, which we are booking for them. So should I emphasize that it is their hall and they come there, and so it falls into the Houston perimeter, So I thought
Yeah.
that then, because there is no statistics about a neighborhood statistic kind of. They are scattered. They are there, but they are also scattered. So I'm a little
Right.
confused whether that will fit in or not fit in.
Yeah.
But
Well, if you wanna, put it in there and then maybe schedule a meeting to talk about your draft with the
yeah,
grant staff, we are
yeah.
definitely available to
Okay.
help
Will you
with
be
that.
able to review the draft that I am doing? Can you see that?
If you submit it early enough and let the grant staff know that that's what you're looking for, they'll be sure to look at it before the meeting.
So if I put submit, then only you can look at it. Or,
So not submit, you'll need to leave it in draft. You'll leave it in draft,
okay,
and then you'll
okay.
schedule a meeting with the grant staff and let them know that you'd like a, application review, and then they'll
Yeah.
go in and look at your draft application.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's hard to explain. Sometimes you have limitation of words, so
Mhm.
I feel I should not cross the number that you're giving below. Like in 100 words you have to describe, or in 250 you have to describe. So I don't want to cross that. And at the same time, I thought that was an important part, because they come to that center, they come to the event hall for other things. So they're used to that area, and that I want to have it in that event hall
Absolutely.
specifically, because then they can come.
Yeah. No, that
And
makes
then,
total sense.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
next year I can take another community of the Indian people, and the next another, like
There
that.
you go. There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah,
That is a great, yes. I
yeah,
see what you're doing, and I have a lot of
yeah,
respect for it. So thank you for
yeah,
your work in the community. We appreciate
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Of
And
course.
thanks HAA too for at least providing us some money to
Of
move
course.
towards that direction. Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course. Of
So,
course.
but one thing you said, tickets have to be put in the thing, because I haven't got any tickets. Would love to get some money back from the community too.
It can be
Yes.
ticketed, and you can include that in your budget. Yes.
So, I know I haven't, I have musicians, I have posters, flyers, newspapers, but they take a lot of money too. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But again, if you want us to review your application specifically, we can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to hop off really quickly because I have to get ready for I'm doing another workshop in the
Oh,
next
no.
few minutes.
I won't keep you, but I have sent that copy yesterday. I scanned it and sent it, because that budget doesn't come through in mine, and the first page doesn't come through.
Okay, so
10,000.
we're gonna
Yeah.
have Val reach out to you directly.
Oh, okay.
He'll reach
All
out
right.
to you. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you, dear.
you. Of
Bye.
course. Bye.
Bye. We'll close the.
All right. There we go.
There's somebody else. Right?
I think this
Oh,
is
AI.
just the note taker.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, AI. Okay.
Oh, okay.